The war had not been declared. It simply began. One moment, human colonies were trading in the outer rim. The next moment, alien warships darkened the skies and fire rained down on cities. Panic spread across the settlements as soldiers tried to mount a defense, but nothing seemed to slow the invaders. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their armies endless. Among the chaos, a young human named Daniel found himself pulled into the storm. He was not a decorated general or an elite warrior, only a field engineer attached to a small defense unit. His job had always been repairing ships, patching damaged armor, keeping machines alive long enough to fight again. But when his unit was overrun, he was captured. Dragged in chains onto a massive alien warship that felt more like a floating city. The corridors were filled with strange lights that pulsed like veins. And alien guards in jagged armor moved with a predator's silence. Daniel expected death. Prisoners did not survive wars like this, at least not for long. But instead of being thrown into a dark cell, he was taken deeper into the ship, into a chamber so vast it could have been mistaken for a palace throne room. The air inside was sharp and cold. Tall pillars glowed with alien runes, casting blue light across a chamber of steel and fire. At the far end, seated upon a throne made from living metal that shifted as if it breathed, was the alien queen herself. She was unlike anything Daniel had imagined. Tall, slender, and radiant, her silver hair spilled like rivers of light. Her crown shimmered with power, and her eyes glowed with a piercing brilliance that made it hard to look directly at her. She wore armor that was both elegant and terrifying, crafted with patterns that seemed alive, shifting with every breath she took. Every alien in the chamber bowed as she rose. The queen stepped down from her throne, each movement commanding the air itself. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew this was the end. No human could stand before such a being and live. The guards shoved him to his knees. Cold metal pressed against his back as they forced him to lower his head. The queen stopped only a few steps away. For a long moment, she studied him in silence. Her voice, when it came, was soft but carried through the chamber like thunder. "A fragile creature of flesh," she said. "You do not kneel out of loyalty, but out of weakness. Tell me, human, why should I not end your life here and now?" Daniel's throat was dry. He should have begged, pleaded, promised her anything to survive. But maybe it was the fear, or maybe it was the madness of being dragged across half a galaxy only to die at the feet of a goddess of war. Whatever it was, he heard himself speak words that shocked even him. "You'd make a cute wife." The chamber froze. Every guard stiffened. The translator drones that hovered in the air repeated his words across the room, their cold mechanical voices echoing, "You would make a cute wife." Daniel's heart dropped into his stomach. What had he just said? He braced himself, waiting for a blade to cut him down. A nervous laugh almost escaped him, but he bit it back. He knew he was already dead, but instead of fury, something else filled the silence. The queen tilted her head slightly, her glowing eyes narrowing, as if weighing a truth hidden in his madness. Then, in a voice as sharp as a blade and yet as calm as the stillness before a storm, she said, "I accept." Daniel blinked. His mind scrambled to make sense of the words. He looked up, his eyes wide. Wait, what? The alien guards exchanged glances of shock. Some even snarled in protest, but none dared speak over their queen. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. Her gaze locked on him as though she saw something even he did not. "You have spoken a vow before my court," she continued. "To jest in such a sacred hall is folly, human. But your words are heard. They are binding. Before this throne, before my people, you claim me. And I accept." The chamber trembled. Murmurs spread like wildfire among the courtiers. Some were horrified, others stunned. Daniel felt the weight of her declaration pressing down on him. This wasn't a joke anymore. This wasn't just reckless humor. He had somehow stepped into something ancient, powerful, and terrifying. He opened his mouth, desperate to explain, but her hand lifted and silenced him instantly. The queen's fingers brushed the air, and the guards withdrew. The chains around him fell loose as if cut by invisible blades. "You are mine now," she declared. "Not as a slave, not as a prisoner, but as one who has spoken a vow. The galaxy will judge us, but let them. You will stand beside me." Daniel's head spun. A few hours ago, he had been just another human engineer, caught in a war he couldn't win. Now, by a single foolish joke, he had bound himself to the most powerful being he had ever seen. And as the queen's glowing eyes lingered on him, Daniel realized something far more dangerous than war had just begun. Daniel had never known silence could feel so heavy. The chamber that had once echoed with the voices of alien nobles now stood frozen, every gaze fixed on him. Chains that had once bound his wrists lay broken at his feet, cut free by the queen's command. Yet he did not feel free. The weight of her words still pressed on him, harder than any shackle. He risked a glance upward. The alien queen stood tall before him, her silver hair catching the glow of the chamber's strange lights, her crown gleaming with sharp edges like the rays of a cruel sun. Her expression was unreadable, neither anger nor amusement, but something colder, something absolute. She had accepted. The guards shifted uneasily. One of them dared to speak, his voice low but edged with fury. "My queen, this creature cannot be." "Silence," she cut him off. Her voice did not rise, yet the sound of it rang like a blade through steel. The guard bowed instantly, his eyes averted, and the chamber fell silent again. Daniel swallowed hard. He had meant the words as a desperate attempt to lighten the terror of his situation. Instead, those words had become law. His head spun. He wanted to protest, to explain it was a joke, but every instinct screamed at him to stay quiet. One wrong word here might be his last. "Rise," the queen commanded. His legs shook as he obeyed. Standing upright, he realized how much taller she was, how much her very presence seemed to tower over him. Her glowing eyes studied him like a scientist might study a strange specimen. "You spoke without fear," she said slowly. "Not as a soldier, not as a supplicant, but as one who dares mock death itself. That is unusual." Daniel forced a weak smile. "I've been told I've got bad timing." The chamber stirred with hushed whispers. The queen's lips almost curved into something resembling amusement, but only for a heartbeat. "You will not return to chains," she said. "From this moment, you remain under my watch. You have invoked a vow, and I will test its weight." Daniel blinked. "Test? Wait, you mean?" Her hand lifted, silencing him. Guards approached again, but this time not with weapons drawn. Instead, they gestured for him to follow. The queen turned and walked back to her throne, her long armor dress shimmering like molten silver with each step. Daniel's heart hammered. He followed the guards down the glowing corridor that led away from the throne room. The ship's walls pulsed faintly as if alive, every surface carved with alien designs. He had no idea what awaited him, but every step felt like a march deeper into something he could not escape. The guards finally brought him into a smaller chamber, lined with strange symbols and hovering crystals that hummed softly. The air felt warmer here, charged with energy. At the center was a circular platform, surrounded by alien nobles, tall, imposing figures with metallic eyes and robes laced with shimmering threads. "This is madness," one of them hissed. "Our queen binds herself to a human, a weakling of flesh. It is an insult to the Empire." Another sneered. "The human will not survive the first trial. Let him die, and her vow will be undone." Daniel froze. Trial? His stomach twisted. He hadn't agreed to any of this. The queen entered the chamber, her presence silencing every voice. She took her seat on a raised platform overlooking the circle. Her gaze swept across the nobles before settling on Daniel. "He spoke, and I accepted," she said. "By law, he must be tested. If he survives, his vow stands. If he fails, his life is forfeit." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. "Wait, what kind of test are we talking about?" The Queen's eyes gleamed. "You will learn soon." 2 guards moved forward, fitting strange metallic cuffs around his wrists. They weren't like chains, more like glowing bands of energy that hummed against his skin. The platform beneath his feet lit up, runes blazing to life. Daniel's heart pounded. He wasn't a warrior, not really. He had been an engineer. He could fix ships, patch wounds in hulls, rewire broken systems, but face some alien death trial? He wanted to shout, to argue, to beg her to reconsider. But the Queen's cold gaze met his, and something inside him refused to break in front of her. Instead, he forced a shaky grin. "You know, where I come from, first dates are usually dinner and a movie." The chamber erupted with snarls of outrage from the nobles. But the Queen? Her expression shifted ever so slightly, her lips curving in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Then consider this your first test. Human," she said. The platform trembled. A surge of light swallowed him, and suddenly the chamber vanished. He found himself standing in a vast arena, surrounded by towering walls of steel. Alien symbols burned in the air like fire. Across from him, a massive beast rose from the shadows, its scales glistening, its fangs bared and eyes glowing red. Daniel's stomach dropped. The test had begun. Above, the Queen's voice echoed across the arena. "Prove to my people that your vow was not folly. Survive." Daniel stared at the beast, his hands shaking. He muttered under his breath, "All this because I couldn't keep my mouth shut." The beast roared, shaking the arena walls, and Daniel ran forward, not with strength, but with the only weapon he had ever truly trusted, his mind. The arena shook with the beast's roar. Its body was like a nightmare stitched together from scales and muscle, each step cracking the metal floor beneath its claws. Its mouth split open wide, rows of jagged teeth dripping with a glowing fluid that hissed when it hit the ground. Daniel froze for half a breath, then forced his legs to move. Instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The walls soared high, smooth and seamless, trapping him inside with the monster high above. Alien nobles watched from hovering platforms, their metallic eyes gleaming with cruel excitement. The Queen sat at the center, her silver hair flowing like liquid light, her gaze steady and unreadable. Daniel felt her eyes on him as if they pinned him to the ground. The beast lunged. Daniel dove to the side, the air splitting where he had just stood. His heart slammed against his ribs. He scrambled back up, his mind racing. He wasn't strong, and he had no weapons. All he had was the part of him that had always kept him alive, his ability to see what others missed. He forced himself to look past the terror. The beast's body wasn't just flesh and bone, it moved with strange precision, as though parts of it were artificial. Plates on its side glowed faintly, vents pulsing as it breathed. It wasn't natural. It was engineered. Daniel's mind shifted gears. "All right, big guy," he muttered. "You're a machine with teeth. Machines I know how to break." The beast circled him, growling low. Daniel backed away, scanning the arena. Sparks dripped from a panel in the wall where the monster's last strike had landed. Wires and circuits gleamed beneath the surface. He had no weapons, but maybe the arena itself could be turned into one. The beast lunged again. Daniel sprinted toward the damaged panel, sliding across the floor as the creature's claw barely missed him. He ripped at the wires, sparks flying as electricity snapped across his hands. The beast turned, eyes burning red, and charged. Daniel jammed the sparking cable into the metal floor at the last second. When the beast's claw hit, a surge of energy leapt from the ground into its body. It shrieked, convulsing as blue lightning danced across its scales. The crowd erupted in shock. Nobles hissed and muttered, but the queen leaned forward, her glowing eyes narrowing with interest. The beast staggered, but did not fall. Its roar returned, angrier now. It slammed its tail against the ground, sending Daniel sprawling. Pain shot through his arm as he hit the floor, but he forced himself up, teeth clenched. "Yeah, I figured it wouldn't be that easy," he panted. The monster advanced again, slower this time, wary of him. Daniel's eyes darted across its body, searching for weakness. Then he saw a section of plating near its neck where the glow was faint, where the armor didn't sit flush. He ran, not away but toward the beast. Gasps rose from the crowd. The creature swiped, but Daniel ducked under its claws, rolling between its legs. He scrambled up its back, gripping the ridges of its scales as it bucked wildly. Every second felt like falling into death, but he clung on, climbing higher. The beast snapped and twisted, but Daniel's hand found the weak spot. With every bit of strength he had, he jammed the sparking cable between the plates. The effect was instant. The creature shrieked, its entire body locking as electricity tore through it. It staggered, thrashed, then finally crashed to the floor with a thunderous boom. Smoke rose from its body. The arena trembled with the sound of silence. Daniel lay on the ground, chest heaving, his body aching with every breath. He stared at the beast's motionless form, hardly believing he was still alive. Above, murmurs erupted among the nobles. Some hissed in anger, others in awe. "Impossible," one spat. "He's only flesh." But all Daniel saw was the queen. She had not moved, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she stood. The chamber seemed to bow with her presence. "He lives," she declared, her voice carrying across the arena. "He survives the trial." The nobles fell silent. The queen's gaze locked on him, sharp and calculating. Daniel struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. He raised his hands weakly. "So, what do I win? A dinner date?" Gasps rippled through the nobles, but the queen's lips curved, ever so faintly, into a smile. It was not warm, not kind, but it was there like fire hidden beneath ice. "You win the right to stand another day," she said. "And perhaps more than that." Daniel's knees threatened to give out, but he held her gaze. He realized something terrifying in that moment. It wasn't just survival she saw in him. It was possibility. The trial had not only proven his worth, it had bound him closer to her than he had ever wanted. And as the beast's corpse smoked in the background, Daniel understood one thing with cold certainty. This was only the beginning. The beast's corpse was hauled away, and Daniel was escorted back to the royal wing of the ship. His body ached from the fight, and his hands were scorched where electricity had burned his skin, but he walked with his head high. He had survived. Somehow, by instinct, luck, and a little engineering, he had lived through the trial that was meant to kill him, but survival carried a price. The whispers followed him down the corridors like shadows. Alien nobles in flowing robes hissed as he passed, their glowing eyes sharp with hate. "An insult to the throne," one muttered. "He will bring ruin to the empire," another spat. Daniel ignored them, but their hatred sat heavy in the air. Later, in a chamber lined with blue light and shimmering walls, the queen sat across from him. No guards, no council, only her. She studied him in silence, her eyes glowing faintly like twin suns. Daniel tried not to squirm under her gaze. "You are reckless," she said at last. "Yet you live. Few of my warriors could have turned the arena itself into a weapon." Daniel managed a tired grin. "What can I say? Humans are good at fixing things. And breaking them." Her lips curved, just slightly. "That is why you are still here. But understand this, human, your survival makes you both valuable and dangerous. Enemies gather in the shadows." Daniel frowned. "Enemies?" The queen's voice lowered. heavy with warning. There are those who will not accept you by my side. They believe your presence weakens me. They would see you dead, not in the arena, but in the dark. His gut twisted. So, assassination attempts? Great. I always wanted to be the main character in a spy drama. Her eyes narrowed, but amusement flickered in them. You jest even in the face of death. That may serve you well. But remember, your life is no longer yours alone. Your words bound you to me. If you fall, it will be seen as weakness in me. Daniel swallowed. The weight of what she said hit hard. This wasn't just about him anymore. Somehow, with a single careless joke, he had tied his fate to hers and hers to his. That night, he was given quarters in the royal wing, guarded by silent soldiers whose glowing armor shimmered in the dim light. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling that pulsed faintly like living metal. Sleep came fitfully, and when it did, it brought no peace asterisk. He woke to the sound of a hiss. Instinct pulled him upright, just as a shadow moved across his room. A blade flashed in the dim glow, missing his chest by inches. Daniel rolled off the bed, his body still aching, but adrenaline flooding his veins. The assassin was alien, armored in black, eyes burning with hatred. Unworthy flesh, the figure hissed. Lunging again, Daniel grabbed the first thing he could reach, a metal shard from the broken wall fixture he had smashed into during his fall. He blocked the blade clumsily, sparks flying as steel clashed. His arms trembled under the force. The assassin struck again, but Daniel ducked, slamming the shard into a nearby console. Sparks exploded, showering the room in light. The distraction bought him seconds, just enough to dive behind the heavy table. The door burst open. Guards stormed in, weapons drawn, their eyes glowing as they engaged the assassin. The fight was over in moments, the would-be killer pinned beneath spears of light. Daniel sat against the wall, chest heaving. His hands shook, but his eyes found the queen, who appeared in the doorway, her presence filling the room like a storm. She looked at the assassin, then at him. For a moment, her eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. "You see now," she said. "Enemies do not sleep." Daniel forced a weak laugh. "Neither do I, apparently." The assassin was dragged away, but the queen lingered. She stepped closer, kneeling slightly so her eyes met his. "You should be dead," she said quietly. "Yet you are not. Twice now you survived what should have ended you." Daniel met her gaze, his voice rough. "Maybe I'm just too stubborn to die." For the first time, her lips curved into something real. Not a cruel smile, not the shadow of amusement, but a small genuine flicker of warmth. "Perhaps," she said. "Or perhaps your fate is bound to something greater." The next day, Daniel found himself standing at her side in the war chamber. Holographic maps spread across the room, glowing stars and battle lines shifting with every update. Alien generals stood stiff, their expressions sour at his presence. He studied the map quietly, then frowned. "You're funneling your fleets into their trap," he muttered, pointing at a weak spot in the formation. The generals bristled. One snarled, "Silence, human. You know nothing of our war." But the queen raised a hand. "Speak," she commanded. Daniel swallowed and explained, his engineer's mind breaking down the enemy's movements like machinery. The more he spoke, the more the queen listened, her eyes never leaving him. When he finished, silence filled the room. Finally, she turned to her generals. "Adjust our lines. Follow his counsel." The nobles erupted in outrage. "He undermines us. He will destroy us." But the queen silenced them with a single word. "Enough." Daniel stood awkwardly, unsure if he had just saved or doomed himself. Yet as the queen's glowing eyes lingered on him, he realized something frightening. She trusted him, and in a court where trust was as rare as mercy, that made him both powerful and vulnerable. The throne chamber burned with arguments. Dozens of alien nobles filled the vast hall, their voices clashing like blades. They hissed, shouted, and accused, their glowing eyes cutting toward Daniel as though his very existence was poison. The council's fury had reached its breaking point. He corrupts our queen. One bellowed. He weakens the throne. Another hissed. Every day he breathes is an insult to our ancestors. Daniel stood near the center, surrounded by hostile stares. His fists clenched at his sides, though he forced himself to keep his head high. He had faced a beast in the arena, survived assassins in the dark, and even guided fleets to victory, but none of that mattered here. To them, he was still only flesh. At the far end, the queen sat upon her throne. She had listened in silence, her face a mask of calm that betrayed nothing. Only her eyes moved, scanning her council with quiet judgment. At last, an elder noble stepped forward, his voice cold and unyielding. "My queen, you must choose. Cast off the human and restore your honor, or cling to him and lose your throne. The empire will not follow a ruler bound to such weakness." The chamber fell into heavy silence. All eyes turned to her. Daniel's stomach twisted. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't wanted to be bound to a queen or tied to the fate of an empire. He opened his mouth, his voice rough. "If it costs you your throne, I'll go." The words echoed in the chamber. Gasps rippled among the nobles. Even the queen's eyes flickered in surprise. He continued, forcing himself to stand taller despite the weight crushing him. "I didn't mean for any of this. I made a stupid joke. I don't want your people to suffer because of me. If my leaving keeps you strong, then I'll leave." For a long moment, silence ruled. The nobles smirked, certain they had won. Some even whispered in triumph. But then the queen rose. The air seemed to tremble as she descended the steps of her throne, her silver hair trailing behind her like light itself. She stopped before Daniel, so close he could feel the cold radiance of her power. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, piercing through every word, every thought. "You would abandon me," she said softly. Daniel swallowed hard. "I'd never abandon you. But I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." Something shifted in her expression, just slightly, but enough for him to see. The mask cracked, revealing the faintest flicker of conflict. She turned, lifting her voice so all could hear. "You demand a choice?" she declared. Her voice rang through the chamber like thunder. "Then hear my choice. I will not cast him aside. He is mine. His vow was spoken before this court, and I accepted. To break it now would be weakness. To keep it is strength." The chamber erupted. Nobles shouted in rage, some even dropping to their knees in protest. "This is madness," they cried. "The empire will fall." The queen raised a hand, and silence crashed down like a blade. "If you will not follow me, then you are free to leave. But know this, my rule does not bend to your fear. And neither does my vow." Daniel stood frozen, his breath caught in his chest. She had chosen him publicly, before the highest court of her empire. In that moment, he understood what it meant. She wasn't just protecting him. She was binding their fates tighter than ever. The nobles withdrew, some furious, some silent, all defeated. Yet their hatred did not vanish, it merely shifted, simmering beneath the surface. Later, in the quiet of her private chamber, the queen stood by a window of living glass that looked out into the stars. Daniel lingered nearby, unsure of what to say. Finally, he broke the silence. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. Her eyes remained on the endless void outside. "I did. To abandon you would be to betray myself. The vow was not yours alone, human. It was mine as well." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to protest, to argue that he wasn't worth it, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he asked, "And what happens now?" She turned to him, her gaze steady and sharp. "Now the galaxy will test us. Enemies gather, within and without. They will come for me, for you, for us both. They will seek to tear apart what has begun here. Daniel forced a shaky smile. Well, if it helps, I've never been good at running away. For the first time, her lips curved into something more than a shadow. It wasn't cold or cruel, it was real, warm, almost human. Then perhaps, she said, we will stand together. The moment hung between them, fragile yet unbreakable. Daniel realized then that this was no longer about survival. It was about something greater, an empire on the edge of collapse, a queen who had risked everything, and a human who had stumbled into her world with nothing but foolish humor and stubborn will. Whatever came next, there would be no turning back, and outside, the stars burned brighter, as if the galaxy itself was waiting for their answer. War thundered across the stars. From the great viewing decks of the alien flagship, Daniel saw it unfold, entire fleets colliding in the void. Beams of light carving across the darkness, warships breaking apart in bursts of fire. Human ships, battered and outnumbered, fought side by side with the alien queen's loyal forces. For the first time, enemies had become reluctant allies. Bound by something stranger than politics. At the center of it all stood the queen, calm as steel, her silver hair flowing like light as she commanded with gestures that bent entire battle lines. Daniel stood beside her, armored now in alien plating, fitted awkwardly to his frame. He was no soldier, but the soldiers followed him all the same, for they had seen what he had done in the arena, in the council, in the chamber of war. But this battle was different. The nobles who had opposed the queen had united with an ancient rival empire, seeking to overthrow her and erase the shame of her vow. Their fleets filled the stars, outnumbering hers 3-1. The queen's voice carried through the command hall, calm and sharp. They will break upon us. Hold formation. Daniel stared at the map, mind racing. He saw patterns no one else seemed to notice, the way the enemy overextended, the hidden weak points in their massive numbers. He leaned closer to her. They're pushing too fast. If we bait them into the nebula, their scanners will choke. They'll be blind, easy targets. The generals bristled. He risks everything. One snap. But the queen raised a hand. Do it, orders rang out. Ships shifted. And when the enemy charged into the thick of the nebula, their formations dissolved. Human and alien vessels struck as one, tearing into the blind fleets with precision. The tide began to turn, yet victory was never so simple. The enemy flagship cut through the chaos like a blade, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons. Its cannons lit the void, ripping through the queen's fleets. The battle trembled on the edge of collapse. The queen stood tall, her eyes glowing fiercely. Their leader falls, or we all perish. Daniel's mouth went dry. He knew what she meant. They had to face the enemy head-on. And somehow that meant him too. The queen turned to him, her gaze steady. Stand with me, human. This is our vow. His chest tightened, but he nodded. Yeah. Guess this is one hell of a honeymoon. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, and then she strode to the deck where her warriors gathered. Daniel followed, heart pounding. They entered the assault craft, its walls humming with energy. As the bay doors opened, the stars stretched before them, and the enemy flagship loomed in the distance like a dark god. The assault was chaos. Fire rained down as their craft dodged blasts, slipping through enemy lines. Warriors roared as they landed on the hull of the massive ship, magnetic boots locking them down. Blades clashed, rifles blazed. Daniel fought with desperation, using every ounce of instinct to survive. Then the queen unleashed her power. Energy erupted from her hands, blades of light tearing through armored foes. She moved like a storm, her presence unstoppable. Yet even in her fury, she never strayed far from him. He realized then that she wasn't just fighting for her empire. She was fighting for the vow they shared. They forced their way to the core of the ship. where the enemy commander awaited, a towering alien clad in black armor, eyes burning like coals. "You shame your empire, Queen," the commander snarled. "You will die with your pet." Daniel bristled, but the Queen stepped forward, her voice cutting through the air. "He is not my pet. He is my partner." The battle that followed shook the chamber. The commander struck with blades of fire. The Queen met him with her radiant energy, and Daniel, reckless and stubborn, used every scrap of the environment, pipes, wires, loose panels, to disrupt the enemy's rhythm. He was no warrior, but he was human, and humans survived by refusing to quit. At last, with a roar, the Queen struck the final blow. The commander fell, his armor splitting in a burst of light. The enemy flagship shook, systems collapsing. They fled as the ship tore itself apart, leaping back into their craft just as fire consumed it. Outside, the enemy fleets faltered, their leader gone. The Queen's forces surged, driving them into retreat. The war for now was won. Back aboard her throne ship, silence filled the chamber. Warriors bowed. Nobles who had doubted her stared in stunned silence. And at the center, the Queen stood tall, her hand resting lightly on Daniel's shoulder. She lifted her voice for all to hear. "This human spoke a vow, and I accepted. In that vow, I found not weakness but strength. Together we have endured trial, betrayal, and war. Together we stand victorious. Remember this day not as the day our empire was weakened, but as the day it was reborn." The hall erupted, not with rage this time, but with something new: acceptance. Perhaps even reverence. Daniel stood beside her, bruised and aching, but alive. He looked up at her, voice low so only she could hear. "So, does this mean we're officially married now?" Her lips curved into a smile, warm, sharp, and radiant all at once. "What began as a jest," she whispered, "is now a vow." And as the stars blazed outside, Daniel realized that a single joke had not only changed his fate, but the fate of two civilizations.